In this video, we're going to talk about how to avoid bleeding ears in the congregation and angry glares from the back of the room from your audio engineer. We're going to talk about how to balance the volume of your patches in MainStage or Ableton Live. Hey everyone, I'm David from SundaySounds.com, where we focus our time on creating resources to make it fun and easy for worship leaders and worship keys players to contribute and sound awesome in their live bands. Today we're going to be talking about how you can make sure that the volume between your different keys patches are nice and balanced. If you're a worship keys player or worship leader, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because every week we're putting out new keys tutorials. We're teaching you how to use MainStage and Ableton Live, and we're helping you learn how to approach worship keys as an instrument. So you don't want to miss out. So thank you for subscribing. All right, so let's get into the topic of how to make sure that your worship keys patches are balanced as you change from one patch to the next. I want to give you 3 things that you can control and keep an eye on to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. And then I want to also empower you with 3 things to pay attention to and consider. So to start off with, let's talk about the 3 things that you can control. All right, so the first thing that you can control and that you need to get comfortable with is the way that your software gives you feedback on how loud a specific sound is. So if you're using MainStage or Ableton Live, there's going to be a master output volume area with a decibel reading that lets you know how loud your overall sound is. And you're also going to be able to monitor the decibel level of individual sounds. You need to find out how loud you can get before you start to introduce distortion into your sound, and make sure you never go above that level. Now, if you've ever mixed on an analog soundboard, you might think that right up at Unity, 0 decibels is the place to be, but in the digital world, that's just not the case. Oftentimes, you want to run a little bit quieter than that. You need to spend some time, open up your software, poke around in the menus, in the channel strips or the tracks, and get comfortable with where those level indicator numbers are and how they make an impact on the way that you sound. All right, the second thing that you need to control and get a handle on is the way that the perceived volume of a sound impacts the way that people hear it in the room. So we just talked about having a hard number, a decibel level reading for any one sound and for your overall sound. And that number is important and useful to you as a first checkpoint. But if you only go by the numbers, you're going to have a really hard time dialing in something that feels balanced from patch to patch. And the reason why is that -3 decibels of a nice warm pad feels way different than -3 decibels of a super saw bright synth lead. They might be the same actual volume, but because of the frequencies that they're taking up and emphasizing, they're going to feel totally different. And the perceived volume of a brighter sound is going to be way more intense and much louder to the end listener than something that's darker and doesn't contain as much high frequency content. So yes, look at the actual numbers, the readout in your software, but after doing that and making sure those numbers line up, you also have to think about the way that the sounds you're using are going to be perceived. The third thing that you can control is making sure you leave yourself time and come up with a plan for how you're going to react to changes that need to be made when you get to church. If you're like me and like most worship musicians, you're probably spending time prepping your software at home. You're preparing your keys presets, maybe with some studio monitors or with in-ear monitors, and you can get things sounding great and dialed in that type of controlled environment. But if you go to church and you don't plan on making any changes at all to what you did at home, then you're setting yourself up for frustration and failure. Guys, you're just going to have to make some changes and react to all sorts of different things in the room. So make sure that you come up with a plan and allot yourself some time to be able to make those changes. And if you're the keys player, make sure you let your worship leader know that this is something that you need. And the same thing with your audio engineer. If you don't ask for this time, if you don't let folks know that it's something that you need, then you're gonna slow things down and be seen as disruptive when you're really just trying to fix something that actually needs to be fixed. Now, let me fill you in on 3 things that you need to consider. These are factors that might not be in your control, but you control how you react to them in the moment when you're at church. So the first factor that's a little bit out of your control, but you need to be able to react to, is the fact that every room and every audio engineer is different. If you're playing at a church that you've never played at before or with sounds that you've never used before, you have to be aware of the impact that the room and the audio engineer will have on your sound. If you haven't talked with your audio engineer already, make sure that you fill them in on what you're doing and ask them for flat EQ and a nice amount of gain so that you can actually make adjustments within your software before the sound person starts to make global changes. Even factors like humidity, the temperature, the time of year, the number of people in the room can have an impact on the way that your sounds are going to fill the space. So make sure that you ask your audio engineer, people in the audience whose ears you trust, and other people on your worship team, hey, how is this feeling in the room? Because if you put it together at home with headphones on, it might feel one way, and they could translate in a totally different way in the room. The second factor is that every weekend is different. Some weekends, the auditorium's gonna be full. Some weekends, the auditorium might not have as many people in it, and this is gonna have an impact on your sound. And not just that, you're gonna be playing different songs. So just because it worked one weekend doesn't mean that it's gonna work the next. And this is why it goes back to leaving yourself time to react and make changes once you get into the actual space, and making sure the people on your team that need to understand why you're taking that time. So fill your worship leader and your audio engineer in on what you're hoping to do and what you're looking to achieve when you make those changes. The third factor that you need to consider is that every band is different. If you're like most worship musicians, you're not necessarily always playing with the exact same makeup of volunteer team members. So one week you might have guitarists that play with a specific technique or tone, and the next week it could be completely different. And you have to be able to react and adapt to what the rest of your band is doing. Just because you played it this way last time with this exact sound doesn't mean that that's the right call for this time around. You have to be flexible and listening actively to what the rest of your band is doing so that you're filling the appropriate amount of space, serving the song and contributing to a band. If you take these considerations into account, then you're gonna be well on your way towards making sure that your patch volumes are consistent and actually contribute to the song and make for seamless transitions in your next worship service. All right, folks, leave a comment and let us know which of these points stood out to you the most. What are you going to apply this week to make a difference and take a step towards more balanced patch volumes in your preparation? Leave a comment and let us know. We really want to hear from you. If this video topic resonates with you and you want to make sure that your patches are balanced when you perform live, we have an entire free video course called Building Patches That Sound Great Live, and you're free to sign up for it. So I'll include a link in the description to that resource. There's several videos in that series, and it's totally free, no strings attached. So if you want to check that out, the link is in the description. If you're a worship keys player in Mainstage or Ableton, seriously subscribe to this channel because we put out new tutorials to help you achieve the success you're going for every single week. Thanks for watching.